This week's Nutrition Nugget is your fan favorite Nutrition Nugget, according to our Salad with a Side of Fries March Madness-like tournament on Instagram. So in case you're not familiar, each year on the Salad with a Side of Fries Instagram, we do a bit of a March Madness bracket during college basketball's March Madness tournament. So this year, to change it up, it was all nutrition nuggets. Over the weeks of March, you narrowed it down from 32 Nutrition Nugget episodes to one, your favorite. So here is the encore airing of your 2024 March Madness winning Nutrition Nugget. Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jen Trepic, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. This week, we're talking about peanut butter. So November is Peanut Butter Lovers Month. And I am a peanut butter lover.
Yeah.
Like, full disclosure. I feel like I have also said, you know, when they ask that question of like foods you would take, if you could take 3 foods to a deserted island or something, like
Savory
I think peanut butter would be one of mine. Right. I don't know what the other ones would be. Maybe french fries and cookie dough. But like, obviously I'm not living long on this deserted island. And listen, there have been times in my life where I have sat down with a spoon and a jar of peanut butter. And so, I mean, I grew up on Jif.
Same.
What was your peanut butter growing up? I feel like you were Skippy. Oh, you were Jif? Okay. But people are very particular about their peanut butter.
I actually did not like peanut butter and jelly, but I like peanut butter and chocolate.
Yeah, well, duh. Right. I mean, is there anything? I don't know. I might be judging somebody who doesn't like peanut butter and chocolate. I don't know. But so, like I said, like I've been known to sit down at times in my life with a jar of peanut butter. And there were certainly times where peanut butter was like that bingy behavior. And I would say, okay, I'm not going to keep this in my house. But today I can. And I don't have that bingy behavior with peanut butter anymore. And it's because of the natural peanut butter.
It's more satisfying. And so you don't need to take as much.
So, well, it's a whole host of things. Yeah. So let's get into it. And then there's also the piece of like, you know, well, what about other nut butters and what benefits do peanuts offer us and all that stuff. So I think for most of us, we can read the label on the peanut butter and find out what it's giving us nutritionally, right? We have a whole slew of episodes where we practice reading labels, right? The big thing to look at to determine whether or not the peanut butter is health supporting or health detracting are about it's looking at the ingredients. So if your peanut butter ingredients list says peanuts, period, or maybe it says peanuts, comma, salt, period.
Me too.
I'm generally a fan. Yeah. If you're up for it, I even recommend going a step further for organic peanuts.
Touché.
Okay, so a little sidebar on that. Peanuts are technically not a nut. They're actually in the legume family, like peas and lentils. And that's because they grow underground. So when they're growing underground, they're in that moist soil, which means 2 things. 1, they're particularly susceptible to mold and fungi. And 2, their exposure to pesticides is like dramatic. And while peanuts are generally not GMO, at least as of like 2022, most peanuts were not genetically modified, but they were sprayed with a lot of pesticides. There was one study, I think, where they found 8 different pesticides on the sample. So with that said, if you can do it, go for the organic peanuts. And so with that said, too, if we're choosing the peanut butter that the only ingredients are peanuts or peanuts and salt, you're qualifying as like a minimally processed food, right? It's not whole because the peanuts are typically roasted and then they're ground to turn into that like spreadable consistency, right? The peanut butters that we grew up on, like Jif, and I say this with a heavy heart, they qualify as ultra-processed foods.
Ouch.
I know, right? A lot of the brands that we grew up on, the ingredients list, just, they don't serve us, right? And beyond not serving us, they can actually include ingredients that are
worse over time as well.
Right, that too. I mean, certainly sugar and high fructose corn syrup Now, in an effort to sound better, they say cane sugar sometimes, right? But it's still the same. Or corn sugar is like the new version of high fructose corn syrup that's supposed to sound better. Vegetable oils, right? And trans fats. Those additional oils and the trans fats are really health detracting, right? So we did a nutrition nugget on ultra processed foods back in May of 2023. So May of this year, if you want to go back to that. For today, suffice to say that ultra processed foods are linked to a host of health conditions, some of which are heart disease, metabolic disorders, which both of those we talked about in this week's episode, and then also some cancers and more. So we can minimize those, right? Okay, so I think we've made the argument then for choosing a natural peanut butter.
Pay now or pay later.
Right, exactly. So the biggest objection that I hear from people is the oil on top and the sweetness, right? Okay, so tips for the oil on top. When you first get the peanut butter home, open it and mix it. I'll sometimes pour it out, or I'll pour out a little so that it doesn't like go everywhere in trying to mix it. But the more you pour out, the drier that peanut butter is going to be when you get to the bottom of the jar. Okay, so maybe pour out a little bit. I like to start with like a knife to kind of get some of the oil to the bottom of the jar. And then you can go in, like if you have one of those old school hand mixers that had like the 2 spatula things, you know, like
jars,
to make cookies, whatever. No, I mean, so you just use one of the 2. Like you only put one, you only put one of the spatulas on it. And then you use that on a really low speed to mix it up. Some people will also use like a handheld like milk frother to do that. And then store it in the fridge. And you can store it in the fridge upside down is my favorite. Because then if it does start to separate after that, the oil goes to the top, you go to open it.
Tricks of the trade.
And that's now the bottom. Tricks of the trade for peanut butter lovers, right? Okay. On the sweetness factor, think about getting that sweetness through what you're pairing the peanut butter with. So I'll slice up strawberries and just have some peanut butter with the strawberries. Or maybe a banana with a touch of honey and some of the peanut butter. So instead of all of that having to be in the peanut butter from sources that really don't serve our health, we can choose what that sweetness is, know how much we're having, and make those choices aligned with whatever our goals and our commitment level are.
Definitely.
Cool. All right. All right. So a quick couple things on the nutrition front of peanut butter. So in a 2 tablespoons serving, you'll get 191 calories, 15.3 grams of fat, 7.2 grams of protein, 7.4 grams of carbs, of which there's about 1.5 grams of fiber and 3.3 grams of sugar. So looking at this and thinking about, you know, ticking off nutrition boxes, the fiber is only a little bit. The protein is about 1 ounce, right? If 7 grams is like 1 egg, which is like 1 ounce of a cooked meat, it's about 1 ounce of protein in that, you know, the 2 tablespoons of that peanut butter. But it's 15.3 grams of fat. So the reality is that we're getting mostly fat. And by the way, continuing part of the conversation that we had this week about amino acids, peanuts are not a perfect protein. So peanuts are missing at least one of the essential amino acids that we need. So again, it comes down to pairing the food, but recognizing that like while it can be a little bit of added protein, the primary nutrient we're getting from peanut butter is fat.
Is it a good fat or a bad fat?
Funny you should ask, right? So, by the way, before we go to the fat thing, some people will say to me, okay, well, if it's only 1 ounce of protein, then I'm going to have 4 tablespoons in order to get to 2 ounces of protein to then have my snack size amount of protein, right? But at that point, now you're at 30 grams of fat. So proportionally, as we multiply the servings, right, we're still out of balance of what we're looking to get nutritionally. Does that make sense? Okay. So to your point on the fat, peanut butter is a great option for a lot of low carb people, right? And people focused on the glycemic impact of their foods. So there was actually a study so it was one of those studies that looked at a bunch of studies, like a meta-analysis. So this one looked at 8 studies and concluded that peanut butter consumption may be inversely associated with type 2 diabetes. And that might be because of the fat. So one of the kinds of fat that's in it is called oleic acid. There are also antioxidants that might be playing a role in some of this type 2 diabetes research, but with the fat content, right? So it's mostly oleic acid. This oleic acid is a monounsaturated fat, which is the same, it's also found in olive oil. Studies do show that oleic acid can have health benefits, one of which is improved insulin sensitivity. The other kind of fat in peanuts is linoleic acid, which is an essential omega-6. Okay, so omega-6s are often what's found in vegetable oils. And linoleic acid is often found in vegetable oils. And as I'm sitting here, I'm trying to think about if we've talked about this before. But, okay, so essential omega fatty acids essential means we have to take it or eat it. We can't make it, right? So we do need 6s and 3s. Both are essential fatty acids. However, the body wants a particular ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. I'm going to do a nutrition nugget just on this, I think. But I think we talked about it in a nutrition nugget on omega-3s. But so the body wants a ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. Most people are dramatically out of whack. Like somewhere, and I'm recalling this from the back of my head. So I want to say the ideal ratio is somewhere between 1-to-1 and 4-to-1 of 6s to 3s. The average person is 20 to 40 to 1. And that's because we get a lot of these vegetable oils in our everyday nutrition, eating, a Western diet, right? So the ratio is out of proportion. And when that ratio is out of proportion, it can be pro-inflammatory or increasing our risk of chronic disease. So this is the case of more is not more, right? Even though omega-6s are an essential nutrient. Okay, so where does this leave us, right? Yes, peanut butter is giving us healthful fat in moderation and mixed into a regular nutrition plan that includes other sources of fat and other sources of protein.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, last thing, really quick on the micronutrients. Peanut butter gives us tons of vitamin E, B3, manganese, and copper. There's lots of magnesium and B6, and then a good amount of folate too. There's also biotin, vitamin B5, iron, potassium, zinc, and selenium. And there are some antioxidants. So peanuts have, it's called p-coumaric acid, which is an antioxidant that there was a study on rats that showed reduced arthritis, which is interesting. Peanut butter also has resveratrol, which we've talked about before. Resveratrol is often thought of for supporting heart health and even healthy blood sugar. I think the thing that I want to point out here is that when you're eating a couple tablespoons at a time of the peanut butter, your veggies are going to be or your fruit, right? The things that you're pairing with it are going to be a much bigger bang for the buck nutrient-wise for the micronutrients than your 2 tablespoons of peanut butter are, because that peanut butter is really giving us mostly fat, even though it has these other nutrients with it. So last thing, going back to before what I said of like, I could sit down with a jar of peanut butter, and now that I use natural peanut butter, I can keep it in my house and I don't have like the bingy behavior. And I think it's infinitely easier because the ingredients are clean, right? I think one of my favorite examples of how it's not willpower. Like it's not you. There's nothing wrong with you. It's the chemicals in the food, and the quality of food matters.
Sure, of course. Quality over quantity.
Right. And so if we can choose the natural peanut butters, the organic peanut butter, if you can do it, you'll probably find that your body can respond to the presence of this food, and you will actually know when you're satisfied and when you've had enough of it. But the high fructose corn syrup and the hydrogenated oils and the way that they're formulated so that every bite doesn't taste exactly the same, it keeps you going back into the jar.
Good point.
It's not you.
Good point.
All right, Keith, anything you want to add or any questions about peanut butter?
We hit the omega-3s, the omega-6s. What about those omega-9s? Not to make this a Tesla 369s of the universe.
Yeah, right. So omega-9s are technically not essential. The body can actually make omega-9s if you have 3s and 6s.
And if your body can make certain nutrients by consuming them, whether it's peanut butter or something else, are you diminishing your body's natural response to produce those?
It depends. Different things function differently in the body. The big fundamental piece is you have to give your body the building blocks,
That foundation,
to make the things. So if we aren't giving the body raw material,
right?
it can't do it. Yeah. Good questions. All right. I think we did a thing. As always, everybody, I am your host, Jen Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or all social media. I'm at Jen Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Website is asaladwithasideoffries.com. You can find merch there. You can contact us there. Really, you can also contact through social media. Whatever platform makes you happy, send a message. I want to hear your takeaways, your ideas, your questions. This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me as your health coach. Keith, thank you again for joining me. Absolutely. We'll have to do this again. All right. Of course, everybody, if you are not already a member, join our membership program by going to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries to show your support for this podcast, this community, and most importantly, your health. You'll get this week's recipe for the Copycat Sweet Green Harvest Bowl. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.